I had a beautiful email from Billy and Karen Vaughn last night, Betrayed, SEAL Team 6, wishing all of us the best, wish they could be here, and much love to our Alan. Now, I'm going to introduce David, because we have a surprise for...
Surprises are for birthdays.
You're not in charge.
Thursday was my 71st.
We're going to look at day over 50.
I've been woman 47 years. Still do your morning.
Oh, thank you, Clay. I appreciate that. And thank you, Congressman, for ruining my introduction. No, that's quite all right. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon once again. Welcome. We're all glad that you could be here. I can tell by the faces that I'm seeing in the crowd right now that a lot of you have no idea who I am or why I'm up here. And I also know that there's a few in here that do know who I am, and you cannot wait till I sit down and shut up. Anyway, Congressman West, before we get on with the rest of the afternoon, we do have a special surprise, which is not so much of a surprise right now, but we did keep a special guest a secret for you today. In just a few moments, I'm going to invite a special guest that has been waiting in the wings up till right about now, because we know how much you respect and admire this person. And as a result of that,
My wife.
your wife, yes, she's here as well. So we thought it would be very fitting if she could honor us by saying a few words and perhaps reintroduce you to the group personally. So we reached out to her. We asked her if she could do that and be here, and she could not say yes fast enough. She's a frequent Fox News contributor, an author, a businesswoman, and one of the bravest women I have ever had the privilege of personally meeting. Without another word, would you all please join me in a warm Palm Beach County welcome for the one and only, the chairman and CEO and founder of Act for America, Brigitte Gabriel.
Oh, man. Oh my God. Okay. You guys got it.
Alan. I cannot tell you how honored I am to be here today. As David said, when they called me and asked me if I would be so kind as to come down and introduce Alan West at this special fundraiser, it didn't take me more than 10 seconds to say I will fly across country to have the honor and the privilege to be standing with you and introducing you. Alan West is my hero. I met Alan the first time when he was elected to Congress. I went up to Capitol Hill, and as a part of my work and outreach to elected officials, and I went to meet with him, and I took for him my book, Because They Hate, my first book, autographed to Congressman Alan West. And I walked into his office, and I was so excited to meet him, and he knew how excited I can be, and we both knew about each other and wanted to meet each other. So I walk in, I hand him my book, and I said, Congressman West, such a pleasure to meet you. You're a hero to me. And I hand him my book. And I said, you know, this is my book I would like to give to you autographed. And he said, oh, no. I don't want that book. And, you know, I was taken back for a few seconds. He holds my hand and he says, come with me. And he takes me back to his office and walks to his library and pulls off the shelf my book, Because They Hate. He said, this is the book that I want you to sign for me. This is the book I held in my lap and I read as I served in Afghanistan and in the Middle East and in Iraq. And so he opened the book and it is flagged, underlined, highlighted. It looked like a map. I mean, that book survived God knows what. And he said, this is the book I want you to sign. And I had nothing but tears in my eyes because I was so moved. Because I knew I was in the presence of a patriot. I was in the presence of an American hero who had only in his heart the love of serving this country and protecting this country. Someone like me who travels to Capitol Hill all the time. I began my work talking to elected officials in 2002, right after September 11th. So I have seen people come and go, elected officials come and go. And you pretty much see who is the politician and who is the patriot. It becomes very clear to those of us who deal with these types of people up there. And a lot of people get elected to Capitol Hill for different reasons. Some people get elected for a purpose, for a reason, for a season, and some serve for a lifetime. For Alan West, his service to this country is for a lifetime, whether he is in uniform or out of uniform. A lot of people get to Capitol Hill and they get corrupted by the perks of the job of being on Capitol Hill. And it becomes very obvious for those of us who deal with them because it doesn't take long for them to get corrupted. Except for Alan West. From day one until the day he left office, and he will return if we had anything to do with it. And hopefully as a president one day. And next time. And for Alan West, he remained the same from the day he walked into office until the day he left. He was the same humble servant who did not have a huge ego, who all he cared about was serving our country, serving his constituents, serving the state of Florida, and protecting our nation. And he did that from morning till night. And even when he was not in the office, and I would go up to Capitol Hill, and I would text him sometime when I'm in D.C., and he would take the time to get together for lunch or dinner or pop in somewhere or show up somewhere. So I am here today to tell you, as somebody who has seen so many elected officials and have dealt with so many elected officials, Alan West is a hero to our nation. Alan West is a treasure that we need to support. Alan West is a man that we need to support in every way we can, not only with our time, but also with our finances. And I am here today to tell you that Alan West deserves your support in the most generous way for whatever work he does, whether he's running for office or for his foundation. Because there is no one I know who has the best interest for this country than this amazing gentleman standing here before us today. I cannot begin to tell you into words how privileged I feel to call you my friend, my very close friend, and to do everything I can to help you and support you and work by your side from now until I take my last breath, so together we can make a difference for this nation. Thank you all for being here. I know your time is valuable. At this time, are you going to speak now? Should I introduce you now? Oh, no, I'm not done. Since you're going to speak after me, I've got to do a rundown of your wonderful military honor and all of that stuff. Right? You don't want that?
No, everybody knows that.
Okay. I love you.
You spoke from the heart.
I gotta tell you, that's the great Brigitte Gabriel, and if you have not read her book and know her story about what happened to her, having to live in a bomb shelter during the Lebanese Civil War, having to almost lose her life, but found peace, respite, and care in an Israeli hospital. And that's when she came to understand who really cared for her for who she was. And if you want to find someone that believes in America more than some Americans believe in, Brigitte Gabriel is truly one of those people that understands what our founding fathers established for us 237 years ago. And she fights so passionately for this great nation. And she understands who the enemy is because the enemy almost killed her. So God bless you, Brigitte. Thank you so much. You know, you all are here and you have the paperwork and the handouts and all this stuff and the pins that say Alan West Foundation. And you're probably saying, what is it? The Alan West Foundation is me. Not just the name, but it's my life and it's my life experience. And when you think about what can you give back, after you've been, walked this earth and you're dead and gone, what can you leave as a legacy, not just for your daughters, but for a great nation? And I thought about this as I wrote the book, Guardian of the Republic. How my parents raised me with certain incredible fundamental principles and values. My parents who taught me about faith. My parents who taught me about the importance of family. My parents who taught me about the importance of education, about your own individual responsibility. You didn't blame someone else for your actions. If you did, you got an even worse whipping. They taught me about fiscal responsibility because my parents didn't believe in credit cards. My parents believed if you did not have the money to get it, you put it on layaway. And you paid on it until you could get it. If my mom was alive today, that lady could stretch a dollar like you couldn't imagine. We would not have a debt. We would not have deficits. She would definitely have everything balanced, and we would have a surplus ad nauseum, ad infinitum. But those were conservative principles that my parents raised me with. My parents were registered Democrats. My parents, we were brought up in the same neighborhood as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., my elementary school, right across the street from Ebenezer Baptist Church. Every day, you walk past the final resting place of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. That's what the Allen West Foundation is about. Because we are not going to be able to make a difference in our country until we go into the minority communities and once again talk to them about the fundamental principles and values, the reasons why people like Brigitte came to the United States of America. They didn't come to the United States of America to have an overarching government. They didn't come to the United States of America to live under the tyranny of a government. They came because they knew this was a place where there was opportunity for all. Just the same as a young man born in the inner city of Atlanta, Georgia, once represented this incredible, highest per capita income zip code in the United States of America, Palm Beach. In 1961, when I was born, my parents could not have walked and come over to Palm Beach. 50 years later, I was the congressional representative of Palm Beach. That's the America that we need to once again talk to those children in the inner cities, being in the black communities and Hispanic communities, to get them to understand that no matter where you're born, no matter where you come from, Rob, you live in the greatest nation that the world has ever known. And you can achieve whatever heights, whatever your heart's desire. See, some people would have looked at me in the inner city and said, there's only so far that you can go. Some people would have looked and said, as a matter of fact, it was interesting. I wrote a piece on my Allen B. West website that talked about how the illegal immigration in-state tuition plan that we're trying to institute in Florida will displace 5,000 Floridian students. And there was actually someone from the left, because I talked about my daughter who was in college and my daughter's a junior in high school, someone from the left wrote a comment that said, it's no big deal. Since you have, girls and they're also minorities, they can get on through affirmative action. That's how the left thinks. See, the left thinks that because of my skin color, I can't play in the same sandbox. I can't be on the same playing field. I can't achieve the standards that are out there. But see, my father taught me, you find out what the standard is. You find out what the requirement is and you exceed it. So no one can ever hold you back. That's the message that we have to take back out there. And that's the message that will make a difference in the United States of America. Because right now, when I go back to my neighborhood in Atlanta, Georgia, it's a shell of itself. When you think about my wife and I, we represent just 28% of the black community, mothers and fathers in the home with their children. 50 years ago, the out-of-wedlock birth rate in the United States of America was 6%. The out-of-wedlock birth rate in the United States of America today is 42%. In the black community, 72%. In the Hispanic community, it's close to 60%. Because we're not talking about those simple values, like family, that's so important. We're not talking about the importance of a good, strong education. When you think about what happened in April of 2009, when the President of the United States of America canceled the school voucher program in one of the worst school districts in the United States of America, Washington, D.C. When the Attorney General of the United States of America is going after the state of Louisiana for their school choice school voucher program. When the mayor of New York City is going into Harlem and saying, We're going to shut down the Success Academy, the highest performing school in New York City. And what do you have? Single black mothers marching and protesting in Albany to the governor, saying, please don't let him do that to our children. We have to take the message, as Booker T. Washington talked about, of education, entrepreneurship, and self-reliance back into those communities. That's what the Allen West Foundation is all about. The other thing the Allen West Foundation is about is the thing that put me on the road to be a retired lieutenant colonel in the United States Army. In 1976, as a sophomore at Henry Grady High School, when I first put on the uniform of the United States military as a junior ROTC cadet. When I stood there, men like Lieutenant Colonel Pagonis, Major Heredia, Master Sergeant Buchanan, Sergeant First Class McMichael, men that I will never forget their names because they're emblazoned in me. Men who served in Korea, Vietnam. Master Sergeant Buchanan was a POW in Vietnam. The lessons, the things that he taught me, the path that they put me on to become a future leader. When you look at what has happened with our junior ROTC programs in the United States of America, they're being decimated. When you talk about sequestration and the budget cuts, it filters down to these schools. When I went to one of the oldest black high schools in the state of Georgia, Lucy Laney in Augusta, and I stood there in front of those kids, most of them live in Section 8 housing. Most of them free and reduced lunch. Most of them come from families where, well, they're with aunts, uncles, grandparents. For some of those young men, the only male role model that they will see was the retired lieutenant colonel and the chief warrant officer who served with me at Fort Bragg, Chief Warrant Officer Flournoy. And the importance they have in instilling discipline, maybe giving them an opportunity to find, as they found in me those many years ago, a sense of leadership and ability. When I was out in the state of Washington this past weekend, I went to Walla Walla. Yeah, the town's so nice they named it twice. And I spoke to the cadets at Walla Walla High School. The junior Olympic shooting champions come from Walla Walla High School. These young kids are finding an opportunity through ROTC, high school ROTC, that maybe will land them on the United States Olympic shooting team because they're just that good. And I had a principal that was there from another school that's getting started. He said, what can I do to get you to help me? Because the United States Army Cadet Command has told him and his school that you cannot have a program because we're not looking at opening up any programs. You know what the #1 problem out there in southeastern corner of the state of Washington, in Walla Walla? Teenage drug abuse. And as I stood there and spoke with the sheriff, I told him one simple thing. We either invest in these kids in this program, or the sheriff will be seeing them later. And that's the exact same thing you see. See, kids are always looking to join something. If you don't give them something positive to join, they're going to join something negative. And unfortunately, in the inner city communities, where once families were strong, where once churches were strong, now that they've been decimated, now the rise of gangs has happened. And you know what I'm talking about. You see what is happening down here in South Florida. Look at what just happened up in Connecticut. Who would have ever thought? University of Connecticut wins a national basketball championship and they tear up a school. Rise and protest. Look at what just happened out at the University of California, Santa Barbara. 15,000 students on the college campus get together and they're throwing rocks and bottles and things of that nature. Injured 6 police officers. There's something that is going wrong in America where we're not teaching the same standards of respect and discipline to our young people. And eventually they grow up and they act out in the private sector, what have you. The investment that this foundation is looking to make, the investment that your funds looks to make, is to help us restore those high school junior ROTC programs. Not too long ago, the city of San Francisco canceled their high school junior ROTC programs. And the kids went before the city council with tears in their eyes. Many of those kids were inner city kids, Hispanic and black. And they said, you're taking away the only thing that I have, the only thing that I can belong to, the thing that has taught me so much about myself. And those people on the city council looked out at those kids and they basically told them, we know what's best for you. This is the problem that is happening in America. So you being here today, taking the simple time out of your day, means that you can help to affect a future Allen West. The kid born and raised in the inner city of Atlanta, Georgia. It's a great family, and the opportunity to get on the path of leadership, to serve this country for 22 years in 3 different combat zones, and then rise up to be a congressional representative and represent this incredible Palm Beach area in South Florida. This is what you're helping to do. This is what you're helping to produce. But the last thing, and I'll close on this. When I was in Philadelphia, there were 2 things that I wanted to do when I was there. I'm sure you all know the first thing. I wanted an authentic South Philly cheesesteak. And I did get to go down to Geno's, and I did have my South Philly cheesesteak, and it was good. The second thing was I wanted to see Independence Hall. I wanted to see the birthplace of this great United States of America, where the Declaration and the United States Constitution was written. First Congress met there. And when I was picked up from the train station, you know, I told him that's why, and the guy said, don't worry about it. Because little did I know, I was staying in the Omni Hotel at Independence Park. 1 block right down from Independence Hall. And as I sat in room 811, I looked down on Independence Hall. And I thought about that day in 1787, when the deliberations over the Constitution were over. And Benjamin Franklin walked out, and a socialite by the name of Mrs. Powell of Philadelphia came up to Benjamin Franklin, and she said, "Doctor, so what do we have, a republic or a monarchy?" Franklin immediately responded, "You have a republic if you can keep it." That was the challenge in 1787. Franklin's challenge is still relevant to today. You have a republic if you can keep it. What does that mean? The sovereignty of the individual and the rule of law, preeminent in a republic. If we don't take that message to all corners, all societies, all groups, all communities in the United States of America, then we will fail the challenge that Benjamin Franklin gave us. Not even 230 some odd years ago. We are at the precipice. So what you are doing here today is really important for the future, for the legacy, for the challenge that you have been given as American citizens. I can't thank you enough. And with that being said, we have time maybe to take about 5 questions. What are your questions of me? Thank you so much. Yes, ma'am. Hi.
Yeah, I think that you and Dr. Benjamin Carson.
Your neighbor out at Ibis.
Yes, my neighbor. The 2 of you delivered the message that the minority community needs to hear. It needs to resonate throughout America.
Well, that's why the other side is so vilifies, you know, because, you know, being a black conservative is not something new. It has been around since the days of Frederick Douglass. And what we need to do is once again reconnect that message. I think that when you talk to people in this country about principle, not about party, when you talk to them about principle and values, you will make a better connection than you do if you go down and try to get them to sign up to be a member of a certain party. As a matter of fact, there's a black minister in Southside Chicago. He has a church of about 20,000 former Democrat state senators. Guess who he's supporting coming up in the gubernatorial race in Illinois? Because he's seeing what is happening in the inner city and the failures and the broken promises. And we just have to talk to them. You know, I tell so many people, because I see the faces here, and I know that there are great business owners that are here. The problem is that we don't talk to the employees. The problem is that we don't let them know. Just the same, if I was a colonel, and I would not go down to the motor pool and talk to the privates. I don't understand what's going on in the unit. I don't understand their feelings. I don't understand what they believe in. And therefore, it's real easy for the little barracks rat to come around and say, you know, the old man, he ain't no good. He's out of touch. But when you get the new soldier that comes in and he tries to stir things up in the unit and talk about, you know, the old colonel, they say, hey, man, I don't know what you're talking about. Colonel's out there, you know, look, as a matter of fact, he's there under the Humvee right now, checking out a Humvee. you've got to be engaged. You've got to talk to people. You know, when you pull into a gas station, talk to people. When you're at the grocery store, the checkout counter, just talk to people. Just think about that one little nugget that you can impart to them. Because it may make a difference for them. Because just yesterday, I was looking at the news. You know, the man on the street thing? It's scary. The person walked up to the individual and said, "Do you think that we should give Bill Clinton more credit for winning the Korean War?" You laugh. The person said, "Yeah. You know, I think he has not gotten all the, respect and credit he needs. That was an important war that he won for us." This is what we're doing. So pick one nugget and just talk about it. Yes, sir.
Colonel West, Lieutenant Mike Carpino, 7217 Miami. I just want to know the disconnect between the government and its responsibility to fund the military.
Well, this is the problem. And, George Santayana said back in the 1920s, those who fail to learn from history are doomed to repeat it. And Solomon said in Ecclesiastes, there's nothing new under the sun. Everything does tend to repeat itself. So we always look at the military to be a bill payer for fiscal irresponsibility in Washington, D.C. We always believe that the absence of war means peace. Even John F. Kennedy said the absence of war is not peace. Someone is always looking for the opportunity to get an upper hand over you. So therefore, we look and we say the most important thing is what? Have a strong military, provide for the common defense, or create and expand the welfare and anti-state dependency society. An interesting statistic came out yesterday that a lot of people maybe just glossed over. We have more people on Medicaid in the United States of America than the population of England. We have more people on food stamps in the United States of America than the population of Spain. That's not success. And what you were talking about, think about this. When the Secretary of Defense, Hagel, came out on Monday and announced the cuts to the military, my beloved Army going down to pre-World War II levels, what happened on Friday? Vladimir Putin went across the border into Ukraine and took the Crimean Peninsula. And history repeats itself. Because there was a person back in the 1930s that said he wanted to go protect ethnic Germans in a place called Sudetenland, and he asked to annex it. And a British Prime Minister by the name of Sir Neville Chamberlain said, "Sure, no problem. Just sign this little document. There'll be peace in our times." Next thing you know, the whole Czechoslovakia failed. And then after that was Poland. History has a way of repeating itself, and you don't pay attention to it. Even worse, when you don't talk about it and share those lessons. So I'm very afraid that we're setting up this country for something horrific. Brigitte will tell you that right now the Middle East, where we said we were pivoting away from, it's a mess. Between Libya, who's controlled by Al-Qaeda and the Muslim Brotherhood, now there's a civil war in Egypt with the Muslim Brotherhood and Al-Sisi and the military forces. Look at what is happening in Syria. Lebanon is controlled, your former home, Lebanon is controlled by Hezbollah. Iraq now, Al-Qaeda has taken over the western Al-Anbar province that so many of my brothers and sisters fought so hard to win. And we know what Iran is doing. They're marching toward having a nuclear capability. The fact that Iran named as a UN ambassador someone who formerly held the hostages, they're doing that. Okay? They sense weakness. And weakness, ladies and gentlemen, is intoxicating. It's enticing. We're setting ourselves up for something bad. And we're going to have to play catch up with the military, and I don't know if we'll be able to. Yes, sir. Back in the white shirt.
I'm going to spin off the remarks you made about the youth and how disruptive and unruly they've become. My oldest son is 30, and it's grieved me since he was a little boy to see the trend of our culture, our popular culture. We've always tried to pitch this to the younger generation that you can't sustain a highly technological society on a Beavis and Butthead mentality. We've been trying to do that, and we're broadcasting this among our own kids, and we're broadcasting this corruption around the world. And instead of being an ensign to the nations, we're becoming a stumbling block to the nations. somebody somewhere down the line has got to address this corrupting of the rising generation. And I hope you'll do that.
No, that's absolutely right. And I will tell you that what was so important for me, the lessons that my parents taught me, I was able to make sure that those lessons continued on because of those 4 great ROTC instructors that we had. Let me tell you, it's very simple. Now, the kids in our high school, if there were the normal teachers that were in charge of the lunchroom, it was chaos, you know? But when those 4 guys came in and they were in charge of the lunchroom, it was... Because some first classmate Michael would chew you out like you were a buck private. He didn't care. He was in charge. He was an adult. You're a kid. You're going to do what I say. Sit down, shut up, eat your lunch, and then take it over there and turn it in. And you know what? They responded to it. Because kids want structure. Kids want left and right limits. They want parameters. They want discipline. When they don't get it, then they act out. Because that's what they're seeking. And so, unfortunately, we have a culture in America that, you know, since Dr. Spock came along, you know, and started with all that philosophy. I tell my daughter still today, I'm a benevolent dictator. and that's how we should look at things. I love them to death, but there are left and right limits. Think about what just recently happened up, I think, in New Jersey, where the young lady was going to sue her parents. You know what my mom and dad would have done to me? Oh, Dad, I'm going to call the police on you. Boy, you ain't going to have any fingers to call the police. but we have to once again assert ourselves as adults, assert ourselves as parents. And like I said, you see the breakdown of parents. Think about what happened 50 years ago with the Great Society programs. When President Lyndon Baines Johnson said this, we're going to reward checks to young ladies who have children out of wedlock. And as long as they never have a father in the home, we will continue to reward them a check.
Yeah.
So who became the dad? The government became the dad. And you see what has happened in the inner cities. And it's a shame. It's sad. And I will tell you, and I'll close out on this. College students want to become unionized. Athletes want to become unionized. See, that's our culture. That's adults corrupting the kids.
That's right.
Okay? Because when I went to the University of Tennessee, Willie Gall, Reggie White, Dale Ellis, great guys went on to the NFL, NBA. They were student athletes. They stayed in a different dorm. They got better food. I had soy burgers. They got steak. And they played ball. But they didn't think that they were there to they were employees. They were there to get an education. They just had an additional talent, an additional skill. But now adults have come in and they're telling kids, you know, the kid, the guard for the University of Connecticut, you know, sometimes at night I go hungry. I've been to Iraq, I've been to Afghanistan, I've seen hungry kids. Mr. Shabazz is not a hungry kid. But yet you have adults that is going to encourage that. So the problem does not start with our kids. The problem starts with us. Last question. Okay, right here. I'm sitting there, so you can answer. Yes, sir.
Luis Valdez. I just wanted to find out how is it possible that in 2008, a guy that couldn't even pass a simple civil service test could become the president. This guy, if he would have put in a civil service test questionnaire, he would have been rejected.
It's very simple. I'm going to answer your question very simple.
Can you repeat the question?
The question was, how could this have happened in 2008 with the individual that became our president was reelected? Because we stopped paying attention. Because we believed that Bill Clinton should get more credit for the Korean War. That's how it happens. You know, it happens when you don't understand your fundamental principles and values. You don't understand, you know, when you go out and you talk to people, ask them a question. Is America a republic or a democracy? If they tell you America's a democracy, they got it wrong. America's a constitutional republic. So first of all, if you don't understand who you are, then it's easy. You know, and 5 days before the 2008 election, we're 5 days away from fundamentally transforming the United States of America. If you go back and look at that video, people would share, clap. No one said Okay, time out. Time out, coach. What are you fundamentally transforming us to? But you know what is more important? What are you fundamentally transforming us from? Principles, values. We didn't talk about that. We don't know that. That's the connection that we have to make. That's the message that we have to get out. Or else, the consultant class that sits around and develops all these polls and market tests all these different messages, they come up with all of the bumper sticker slogans. Well, change, we can believe in, we're the change we've been waiting for, forward, shared prosperity, fair share, economic equality, income inequality, equal pay, equal women, war on women. And you know what? We fall for it. Why? Because we only read headlines. Because why? In our schools, we don't teach critical thinking skills. All we do is we tell them, here's a test, pass the test, it's multiple choice, 2 of the answers are wrong, you just got to figure out of those last 2 which one is closest to being the best. Common Core. Think about what Common Core says. If you come up with 2 + 2 = 5, as long as you explain how you got to 5, it's okay. So if a Common Core graduate ever builds a bridge, I ain't going across that. All right, now we can enjoy lunch. Thank you so much.